This is part 3 of our series. But let me make it clear, this is not Sarah's continuation. Tonight, we're uncovering a completely different story. This time, it's about Emily, a 20-year-old whose prom night should have been magical. Instead, it turned into the night that scarred her forever, because the person she trusted most, her own uncle, betrayed her in a way she never imagined. Before we continue deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Because what you're about to hear will show you how predators hide in the most unexpected places, even within our own families. Emily Rose Martinez grew up in the suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona, in a middle-class family that seemed to have everything figured out. Her father, Roberto, worked as an electrician for the city, while her mother, Lisa, managed a local dental office. Emily was the youngest of 2 children, with her older brother Carlos already in his 2nd year at Arizona State University. But if you asked Emily who her biggest cheerleader was, who believed in her dreams more than anyone else, she would tell you without hesitation that it was her Uncle Danny. Daniel Martinez was Roberto's older brother, and at 38, he was everything Emily aspired to become. He owned a successful construction company, lived in a beautiful house in Scottsdale, and seemed to have the perfect life that Emily dreamed of achieving someday. More importantly to Emily, Uncle Danny was the family member who never missed her school plays, never forgot her birthday, and always had time to listen when she needed advice about boys, college, or her future dreams. Uncle Danny made me feel like I could do anything, Emily would later remember. When I told him I wanted to study journalism at ASU, he was the first person to tell me I had what it takes to succeed. When other adults would say college was expensive or competitive, Uncle Danny would say I was smart enough and determined enough to make it happen. The bond between Emily and her uncle had been building since she was a little girl. While her parents worked long hours and her brother was focused on his own teenage activities, Uncle Danny filled the role of mentor and confidant. Throughout Emily's high school years, Uncle Danny was her constant source of encouragement and support. When she made the varsity cheerleading squad, he was in the stands cheering louder than anyone. When she was elected to student government, he took her out to dinner to celebrate. When she needed help with college applications, Uncle Danny spent hours reviewing her essays and helping her perfect her personal statements. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, Emily recalled. Having someone like that in your corner, someone who sees your potential and pushes you to reach for it, it meant everything to me. The family saw Emily and Danny's relationship as beautiful, a testament to the strength of the Martinez family bonds. Roberto often joked that his daughter had stolen his brother's heart, and Lisa would smile when she watched Danny encourage Emily's dreams and ambitions. What they didn't notice were the subtle changes in Danny's behavior as Emily grew from an awkward teenager into a confident young woman. As Emily's senior year approached, Uncle Danny's involvement in her life became more intense. He started showing up at her part-time job at the local bookstore, claiming he was just in the neighborhood but always finding reasons to linger and talk. He began texting her daily, asking about her classes, her friends, her plans for the weekend. The attention felt supportive and caring, but there was an underlying intensity that made Emily occasionally uncomfortable, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly why. When Emily started dating a classmate named Jason during her senior year, Uncle Danny's reaction was immediate and possessive. "You're too good for him," Danny told Emily during one of their Saturday morning coffee dates. "You're going places, Emily. You don't need some high school boy holding you back from your dreams." His concern seemed reasonable. After all, Emily was planning to attend ASU in the fall, and a high school relationship might complicate her college experience. But there was something in Danny's tone that felt more personal than protective. As spring arrived and prom season began, Uncle Danny inserted himself into every aspect of Emily's preparation. He had opinions about her dress, her shoes, her hair, her makeup. When Emily fell in love with a stunning royal blue gown that was slightly beyond her family's budget, Uncle Danny immediately offered to pay for it. "Nothing's too good for my favorite niece," he said, though Emily was his only niece. "This is your senior prom. It needs to be perfect." Emily was grateful for her uncle's generosity, but she was also beginning to feel overwhelmed by his level of involvement in her personal life. When she mentioned to her parents that Uncle Danny seemed to be taking prom more seriously than she was, they laughed and told her how lucky she was to have someone who cared so much about her happiness. "Uncle Danny just wants to make sure you have the best possible experience," Lisa told her daughter. "He knows how important this night is to you." What Emily didn't know was that Uncle Danny had been planning for this night for months. In his mind, Emily's prom represented something far more significant than a high school dance. It represented her transition from girl to woman, and he had decided that he would be the one to mark that transition in ways that would forever change their relationship. May 18th, 2019, dawned bright and warm in Phoenix, with temperatures reaching the mid-80s by afternoon. Emily woke up with butterflies in her stomach, excited about the magical evening ahead. She had been looking forward to prom for months, not just because of the dance itself, but because it represented the culmination of her high school experience and the beginning of her adult life. The day was filled with the typical pre-prom activities: hair appointments, makeup sessions, last-minute dress alterations, and photo shoots with friends. Uncle Danny had arranged for a professional photographer to come to the Martinez house to capture Emily's transformation from everyday teenager to prom princess. When Emily emerged from her bedroom wearing the royal blue gown that Uncle Danny had purchased for her, the reaction from her family was everything she had hoped it would be. "You look absolutely stunning," her mother said, tears in her eyes as she watched her youngest child prepare for one of the most important nights of her teenage life. Roberto was less emotional but equally proud, telling Emily that she was the most beautiful girl who would be at the dance that night. Uncle Danny's reaction was the most intense of all, his eyes never leaving Emily as she moved around the living room, posing for pictures and laughing with her family. Jason arrived at 6 o'clock to pick Emily up, looking handsome in his black tuxedo and carrying a corsage that perfectly matched her dress. The pre-prom dinner at a downtown Phoenix steakhouse was everything Emily had dreamed it would be. Elegant, romantic, and filled with laughter and conversation with their group of friends. For a few hours, Emily felt like the sophisticated college woman she was about to become, confident and beautiful and ready to take on the world. The dance itself was magical in every way Emily had hoped it would be. The Phoenix Convention Center had been transformed into a winter wonderland theme, with white lights, silver decorations, and elegant touches that made the space feel like something from a fairy tale. Emily and Jason danced to every song, from the upbeat pop hits that had everyone jumping and singing along to the slow romantic ballads that allowed couples to hold each other close and whisper about their dreams for the future. Emily felt beautiful, loved, and free as she spun around the dance floor in Jason's arms. This was what she had been looking forward to for months, the chance to celebrate the end of high school and the beginning of her college adventure with the boy she cared about and the friends who had made her senior year special. For those few hours, everything felt perfect and full of possibility. But as the evening wound down and the last dance was announced, Emily began to feel a strange sense of unease that she couldn't quite explain. Throughout the night, she had noticed Uncle Danny's car in the parking lot outside the convention center. When she mentioned it to Jason, he suggested that Danny was probably just being protective, wanting to make sure Emily got home safely. But something about her uncle's presence at her prom felt intrusive and uncomfortable. As students began leaving the dance and heading to various after-prom parties, Emily and Jason walked toward his car, planning to join their friends at a chaperoned party at their classmate Maria's house. But before they reached Jason's car, Uncle Danny appeared in the parking lot, approaching them with a smile that somehow didn't reach his eyes. "Hey there, beautiful," Danny said to Emily, his voice carrying an undertone that made her skin crawl. "How was the dance? You look absolutely incredible tonight." He turned to Jason with a less friendly expression. "I hope you treated my niece like the princess she is." Jason, intimidated by Danny's intensity but trying to be respectful, assured him that Emily had been treated with nothing but respect and kindness. "I'm here to give Emily a ride home," Danny announced, though no such arrangement had been made. "Her parents are worried about her being out too late, and they asked me to make sure she gets home safely." Emily started to protest, explaining that she and Jason had plans to go to the after-party, but Danny's expression made it clear that he wasn't taking no for an answer. "The party will still be going when you get home," Danny said, his hand landing possessively on Emily's shoulder. "But your parents are expecting you, and I promised them I'd bring you home safely. We can't keep them waiting, can we?" Emily felt trapped between her desire to continue the evening with Jason and her lifelong habit of deferring to Uncle Danny's authority. Against her better judgment, she agreed to ride home with her uncle, promising Jason that she would call him later. If you're still here, type "I'm still here" in the comments, because what happens after that ride home will leave you speechless. The drive home started normally enough, with Uncle Danny asking Emily about the dance, her friends, and how the evening had gone. Emily was still feeling the magical glow of prom night, excitedly describing the decorations, the music, and how wonderful Jason had been as her date. But as they drove through the Phoenix suburbs, Emily began to notice that Danny wasn't taking the familiar route to her family's house. "Where are we going?" Emily asked, a note of concern creeping into her voice as Danny turned into a neighborhood she didn't recognize. "This isn't the way home." Danny glanced at her with what he probably intended to be a reassuring smile, but which made Emily's stomach tighten with anxiety. "I thought we'd stop by my place for just a few minutes," Danny said, his voice taking on the tone he used when he wanted to convince Emily of something she wasn't sure about. "I have a special graduation gift for you that I've been saving for tonight. It'll just take a minute, and then I'll get you home. Your parents aren't expecting you for another hour anyway." Emily wanted to say no, wanted to insist that they go straight to her house, but something in Danny's tone made it clear that this wasn't really a request. She had spent her entire life trusting her uncle's judgment and following his guidance, and even though every instinct was telling her that something was wrong, she found herself unable to challenge his authority. Danny's house in Scottsdale was elegant and expensive, the kind of place Emily hoped to live someday when she became a successful journalist. She had been there dozens of times for family gatherings and holiday celebrations, but tonight it felt different, more isolated, more threatening. As they walked through the front door, Danny's demeanor changed in ways that made Emily's heart race with fear. "You really do look incredible tonight," Danny said, his eyes traveling over Emily's prom dress in a way that made her feel exposed and uncomfortable. "You've grown into such a beautiful young woman. I've been watching you change from a little girl into this, and I'm so proud of the woman you've become." There was something in his voice that made Emily's skin crawl, a possessiveness that felt inappropriate and frightening. "Where's my graduation gift?" Emily asked, trying to keep her voice light and normal while fighting the panic that was building in her chest. "I really should get home. Mom and Dad will be worried if I'm too late." But Danny didn't move toward a closet or drawer where a gift might be stored. Instead, he stepped closer to Emily, close enough that she could smell the cologne he always wore and see the intensity in his eyes. "The gift is understanding," Danny said, his hand reaching out to touch Emily's face in a way that felt nothing like the affectionate gestures she remembered from childhood. "Understanding how special you are, how much you mean to me, how much I've been waiting for this moment." Emily tried to step backward but found herself pressed against the wall with nowhere to go. What happened next in Danny's living room would shatter Emily's understanding of family, trust, and safety in ways that would take years to heal. The man who had been her mentor, her supporter, her biggest cheerleader, became her attacker. In the space where she had celebrated holidays and family milestones, wearing the dress he had bought for her to celebrate her transition to adulthood, Uncle Danny stole something from Emily that could never be returned. The details of what happened are too painful and too private to share in their entirety, but the impact was immediate and devastating. In the span of an hour, Emily's entire understanding of love, family, and her own worth was destroyed by the person she had trusted most completely. When it was over, Danny straightened his clothes and looked down at Emily with a mixture of satisfaction and ownership that made her feel sick. "Now you understand how special you are to me," he said, his voice returning to its familiar, caring tone as if nothing had happened. "Now you know how much I love you, how much I've always loved you. No boy your age could ever love you the way I do." He helped Emily to her feet, his touch now feeling like poison on her skin. "This is our secret," Danny said, his voice taking on a warning tone that Emily had never heard before. "Our special secret that no one else could understand. You wouldn't want to hurt your parents by telling them something that would destroy our family, would you? You know how much they depend on me, how much I've done for all of you. You're a smart girl, Emily. You understand what would happen if you tried to tell anyone about this." The drive to Emily's house was a blur of shock, shame, and terror. She sat in the passenger seat of Uncle Danny's truck, her beautiful prom dress wrinkled and stained, her carefully styled hair disheveled, her makeup smeared from tears she couldn't stop crying. Danny drove in silence for most of the trip, occasionally glancing at Emily with what looked like concern but felt like possessiveness. "You need to clean yourself up before we get home," Danny said as they neared Emily's neighborhood. "Your parents are going to want to hear about prom, and you don't want them to think anything went wrong, do you? Tonight was supposed to be magical for you." And it was, wasn't it? Just not in the way you expected. Emily wanted to scream at him, to tell him that he had destroyed what should have been one of the best nights of her life, but the words wouldn't come. When they pulled into the driveway of the Martinez house, Emily could see her parents waiting in the living room, probably eager to hear about every detail of prom night. The thought of facing them, of pretending that everything was normal, felt impossible. But Danny's final words before she got out of the truck made it clear that she had no choice. "Remember," he said, his hand gripping her arm tightly enough to leave bruises, "this is our secret. You're a smart girl, and you know what's best for your family. Don't do anything that might hurt the people you love." Emily nodded numbly, unable to find her voice or her courage, and walked toward her house on unsteady legs. Her parents' excitement about prom night was heartbreaking to witness. Lisa wanted to hear about every detail: the decorations, the music, Emily's friends' dresses, how Jason had treated her. Roberta was more reserved but equally interested, asking about the dinner and whether Emily had had the magical night she had been dreaming about for months. "It was beautiful," Emily managed to say, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack her face in half. "Everything I hoped it would be." The lie tasted bitter in her mouth, but Uncle Danny's threats echoed in her mind, reminding her of all the ways he was woven into her family's life and all the power he held over people she loved. Lisa noticed that Emily seemed tired and emotional, but attributed it to the natural exhaustion that comes after a big event like prom. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," she told her daughter, hugging her tightly. "I'm so glad you had such a wonderful night. Uncle Danny said you were the most beautiful girl at the dance." The mention of Uncle Danny made Emily flinch, but her parents interpreted it as embarrassment at the compliment. Emily went to her bedroom and immediately showered, trying to wash away the feeling of Danny's hands on her body and the memory of his violation. But no amount of hot water and soap could clean away the shame and horror that had settled into her bones. She put on pajamas and climbed into her childhood bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to process what had happened to her. Sleep was impossible. Every time Emily closed her eyes, she was back in Danny's living room, reliving the nightmare he had put her through. She found herself questioning whether what had happened was real, whether she had somehow misunderstood his intentions, whether she had done something to encourage his behavior. The self-doubt and self-blame that would plague her for years began that very first night. The days following prom night were a blur of pretending everything was normal, while Emily's world fell apart inside her. She graduated from high school 2 weeks later, walking across the stage to receive her diploma, while Uncle Danny sat in the audience with the rest of her family, applauding and taking pictures like the proud uncle he appeared to be. To everyone else, Emily looked like a successful, college-bound young woman with her whole life ahead of her. Inside, she felt broken and hollowed out. The hardest part was maintaining her relationship with Jason while processing the trauma of what Uncle Danny had done to her. Jason was sweet and caring, excited about spending the summer together before they both left for college in the fall. But Emily found herself pulling away from his affection, unable to bear physical contact that reminded her of that night in Danny's house. "You seem different since prom," Jason told her during one of their increasingly strained conversations. "Did something happen that night that you haven't told me about? Did I do something wrong?" Emily wanted desperately to tell him about Uncle Danny, to share the burden of her secret with someone who cared about her. But Danny's threats echoed in her mind, and she was terrified of what would happen if the truth came out. Summer passed in a haze of family gatherings where Emily had to sit across from Uncle Danny and pretend everything was normal. He acted as if the assault had never happened, maintaining his role as the devoted uncle who was proud of Emily's achievements and excited about her college plans. But there were moments, meaningful looks, casual touches, comments about how grown-up she was becoming. That reminded Emily of their special secret. The worst part was that Danny continued to insert himself into Emily's life as if nothing had changed. He offered to help her shop for college supplies, suggested they have regular coffee dates to talk about her classes and her future plans. When Emily tried to avoid these interactions, Danny would go through her parents, expressing concern about Emily's emotional state and offering his support during her transition to college life. "Uncle Danny is worried that you're stressed about starting college," Lisa told Emily one afternoon. "He thinks you might be withdrawing from the family because you're nervous about leaving home. He's offered to take you shopping for your dorm room and maybe have dinner afterward. Isn't that sweet of him?" Emily's stomach turned at the thought of being alone with Danny again, but she couldn't explain her reluctance without revealing the truth. As August approached and Emily prepared to leave for Arizona State University, she felt a mixture of relief and terror. Relief because she would finally be away from Danny and the constant reminder of what he had done to her. Terror because she was taking the secret with her, and she didn't know how to build a future while carrying such a devastating burden from her past. Her parents threw a going-away party the weekend before she left for ASU, inviting extended family and friends to celebrate Emily's achievements and wish her well. Danny gave a speech about how proud he was of his favorite niece, how much he would miss her, and how he knew she would accomplish amazing things in college and beyond. Everyone applauded and smiled, seeing a devoted uncle expressing his love for his niece. Only Emily could see the possessiveness in his eyes and hear the warning in his words. If you've made it this far, drop "still here" in the comments, because you need to hear how Emily finally broke her silence. Arizona State University's Tempe campus was everything Emily had dreamed it would be, a place where she could start fresh, pursue her journalism degree, and begin building the life she wanted for herself. For the first few weeks, being away from home felt like a reprieve from the nightmare that had consumed her summer. She threw herself into her classes, joined the student newspaper, and tried to create some distance from the trauma that had defined her life since prom night. But Uncle Danny had no intention of letting Emily escape his influence. He began showing up on campus unannounced, claiming he was in the area for business and wanted to check on his favorite niece. He would take Emily to expensive dinners, buy her gifts she didn't want, and insist on hearing about every aspect of her college experience. To anyone watching, he looked like a devoted uncle supporting his niece's education. Emily knew better. "I've missed our talks," Danny would tell Emily during these unwelcome visits. "You seem distant lately, like you're trying to forget about your family. I hope college isn't changing who you are, Emily. I hope you remember where you come from and who has always been there for you." The threats were subtle but unmistakable, reminding Emily that their special relationship was ongoing and that her silence was still required. The situation escalated during Emily's second semester when Danny began calling her multiple times a week, wanting detailed reports about her classes, her friends, her social activities. When Emily tried to limit these conversations, Danny would call her parents, expressing concern about Emily's emotional state and suggesting that she might be struggling with the transition to college life. "Uncle Danny is worried about you," Roberto told Emily during one of their weekly phone calls. "He says you seem withdrawn and that you're not returning his calls. He's just trying to be supportive, mija. You know how much he loves you and wants you to succeed." Emily felt trapped between her desire for independence and her family's expectation that she maintain her close relationship with Uncle Danny. The worst incident occurred during Emily's spring break, when Danny insisted on taking her on what he called a celebration trip to Las Vegas to commemorate her successful first year of college. Emily tried to decline, claiming she had too much homework and wanted to spend the break studying. But Danny had already spoken to her parents, who thought the trip was a generous gesture from a loving uncle. The 3 days in Las Vegas were a nightmare of psychological manipulation and implied threats. Danny booked a suite at an expensive hotel, took Emily to shows and dinners, and constantly reminded her of his generosity and devotion. He didn't assault her again during the trip, but his behavior made it clear that he considered her to be his property and that their relationship was far from over. "You're so lucky to have someone who cares about you this much," Danny told Emily as they sat by the hotel pool on their final day. "Most girls your age don't have anyone who understands them the way I understand you. I hope you appreciate what we have together, Emily. I hope you know that what we share is special and worth protecting." Emily returned to ASU after spring break feeling more trapped and hopeless than ever. She began having panic attacks, struggling with insomnia, and finding it difficult to concentrate on her classes. Her grades began to slip, and her involvement in extracurricular activities decreased as she withdrew from social situations that felt overwhelming and threatening. Emily's sophomore year at ASU was marked by a steady decline in her mental health and academic performance. The secret she was carrying, combined with Uncle Danny's continued presence in her life, was slowly destroying her ability to function normally. She began seeing a counselor at the university's Student Health Center, initially seeking help for what she described as anxiety and depression related to academic pressure. Dr. Jennifer Kim was a trauma specialist who had worked with many survivors of sexual assault, and she recognized the signs of abuse trauma in Emily's symptoms even before Emily was ready to name what had happened to her. Sometimes our bodies and minds react to experiences that we're not ready to talk about yet, Dr. Kim explained during one of their early sessions. Healing begins when we feel safe enough to explore those experiences with someone we trust. It took several months of therapy before Emily was able to tell Dr. Kim about Uncle Danny and what had happened on prom night. The words came out slowly at first, fragments of memory and emotion that she had buried so deeply that accessing them felt like reopening fresh wounds. But with each session, Emily felt a small portion of Danny's power over her beginning to dissolve. "What happened to you was not your fault," Dr. Kim told Emily repeatedly. "You were betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you, and your response, the silence, the shame, the self-blame, those are normal reactions to trauma. You survived something terrible, and now you have the opportunity to reclaim your power." As Emily's junior year began, she made a decision that would change everything. She was going to tell her parents about Uncle Danny's assault and break the silence that had controlled her life for over 2 years. The decision was terrifying, but Emily had begun to understand that carrying the secret was more dangerous than revealing it. She planned the conversation carefully, waiting until Thanksgiving break when she would be home for several days. Uncle Danny would undoubtedly be there for the family celebration, but Emily had decided that she could no longer sit at the same table as her attacker and pretend everything was normal. The night before Thanksgiving, Emily called Dr. Kim for support and guidance. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if they don't believe me? What if they blame me? What if this destroys our family?" Dr. Kim reminded Emily of all the progress she had made in therapy and all the strength she had discovered within herself. "You are not responsible for other people's reactions to your truth," Dr. Kim said. "You are only responsible for speaking that truth with courage and honesty. Whatever happens next, you will have taken back your power and stopped allowing his abuse to control your life." Thanksgiving dinner at the Martinez house began like dozens of others Emily had attended throughout her life. Her mother prepared traditional Mexican dishes alongside turkey and stuffing, creating a feast that reflected their family's heritage and traditions. Uncle Danny arrived bearing expensive wine and gifts, playing the role of the generous uncle who never forgot how much his family meant to him. For the first hour of the celebration, Emily sat at the familiar dining table, listening to the comfortable chatter of family conversation and marveling at how normal everything seemed when she knew she was about to detonate a bomb that would change everything forever. After dinner, as the family gathered in the living room to watch football and share stories, Emily took a deep breath and asked for everyone's attention. "I have something I need to tell all of you," she said, her voice stronger than she had expected it to be. "Something that happened 2 years ago that I should have told you then, but I was too scared and ashamed to speak up." The room fell silent, and Emily could feel Uncle Danny's eyes on her, burning with the intensity of someone who knew his secret was about to be exposed. Her parents looked concerned but attentive, while her brother Carlos shifted uncomfortably, sensing that whatever Emily was about to say would be serious and life-changing. "On prom night 2 years ago," Emily began, her voice steady despite the terror racing through her body. "Uncle Danny, he—" Emily paused, gathering her courage for the words that would shatter her family's understanding of the man they had trusted and loved for decades. "He sexually assaulted me," Emily said, the words hanging in the air like a physical presence that changed everything in the room. "After he picked me up from prom, he took me to his house instead of bringing me home. He violated me in the most horrible way, and for 2 years, I've been carrying this secret because he threatened me and made me believe that telling the truth would hurt all of you." The silence that followed Emily's revelation was deafening. Her mother's face went pale, her father's expression shifted from confusion to rage, and Carlos looked back and forth between Emily and Uncle Danny as if trying to process what he had just heard. Danny himself sat perfectly still, his mask of shocked innocence not quite hiding the calculation beneath. "Emily," her mother finally whispered, tears beginning to stream down her face. "Mija, why didn't you tell us? Why did you carry this alone for so long?" The pain in Lisa's voice was heartbreaking, but it was also validation that Emily's decision to speak had been right. Her mother's first instinct was not to question or blame, but to grieve for her daughter's suffering. Uncle Danny's response was swift and predictable. "Emily is obviously having some kind of breakdown," he said, his voice taking on the concerned tone he had perfected over decades of manipulation. "I don't know what's caused her to develop these delusions, but I'm deeply concerned about her mental health. The stress of college, maybe some experimental drug use, these things can cause serious psychological problems." But Emily was ready for his denial, and 2 years of therapy had prepared her for exactly this moment. "I knew you would say that," Emily said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I knew you would try to make everyone think I was crazy or lying, but I'm not crazy, and I'm not lying. I remember every detail of that night." The confrontation that followed Emily's revelation was the most intense and painful experience in the Martinez family's history. Once Emily found her voice and began sharing the details of Danny's assault and the psychological manipulation that had kept her silent, the family dynamic shifted dramatically. Roberto's reaction was immediate and violent. He lunged toward his brother, ready to physically attack the man who had violated his daughter, but Carlos and Lisa managed to restrain him before he could cause serious harm. "You piece of trash!" Roberto screamed at Danny, his face red with rage and tears streaming down his cheeks. "She's my baby girl. She's your niece. How could you do this to her? How could you do this to our family?" Danny continued to deny the accusations, but his explanations became increasingly desperate and contradictory. First, he claimed Emily was lying for attention, Then he suggested she was having psychological problems. Then he tried to minimize what had happened by claiming it had been a misunderstanding. Each new explanation only served to confirm Emily's account and further enrage her family. "Get out," Lisa finally said, her voice quiet but filled with steel. "Get out of my house and don't ever come back. You are not welcome in this family anymore. If you ever try to contact Emily or any of us again, we will call the police." Danny's final words as he left revealed the extent of his narcissism and manipulation. "You're making a terrible mistake," he told the assembled family. "You're choosing to believe the confused memories of a troubled girl over someone who has been part of this family for 40 years. When she admits she made this up, when you realize what you've thrown away, don't expect me to forgive you." After Danny left, the Martinez family spent the night talking, crying, and beginning the long process of understanding how they had failed to protect Emily. They discussed the warning signs they might have missed, the ways Danny had manipulated family dynamics to gain access to Emily, and the steps they needed to take to support her healing and seek justice. "We're going to report this to the police," Roberto said as dawn broke over Phoenix. "I don't care how much time has passed or how difficult it will be to prove. What he did to you was a crime, and he needs to be held accountable." Emily felt a mixture of terror and relief at her father's words. The thought of involving law enforcement was frightening, but it also represented the final step in reclaiming her power from Uncle Danny. Carlos, who had been mostly silent during the night's revelations, finally spoke up. "I'm sorry, Em," he said, using her childhood nickname. "I'm sorry I wasn't there to protect you. I'm sorry you had to carry this alone for so long. But I'm proud of you for speaking up. I know how hard this must have been." The support from her family was overwhelming and healing in ways Emily hadn't expected. For 2 years, she had convinced herself that speaking the truth would destroy the people she loved. Instead, she discovered that her family's love was strong enough to handle the truth, and that their anger was directed where it belonged. At Danny, not at her. Filing a police report 2 years after the assault proved to be as challenging as Emily had feared it would be. Detective Maria Gonzalez, who specialized in sexual assault cases, was compassionate and thorough, but she was also realistic about the obstacles they faced in building a case against Uncle Danny. "The delay in reporting doesn't invalidate your experience," Detective Gonzalez explained to Emily and her parents. "We understand why survivors often wait years to come forward, especially when the perpetrator is a family member. But it does make gathering evidence more difficult, and we need to be prepared for that challenge." The investigation that followed revealed information that both validated Emily's experience and horrified her family. Police discovered that Danny had been the subject of complaints before, whispered concerns from other family members about his inappropriate attention to young female relatives, reports from former employees about his behavior toward teenage workers, and rumors in the community about his relationships with much younger women. Most importantly, during the investigation, another victim came forward with a similar story. Maria Delgado, now 24, had been assaulted by Danny when she was 19 and working as a receptionist at his construction company.